keynote speaker and panelists, I would now ask the moderator to highlight you about this session.
This session, Entrepreneurship and Investment in People Industry, we have our keynote speaker, Mr. Adnan Managing Director of Genex Infosys Limited, keynote speaker. Our chief guest, Mr. Mutlu Ahmed, at 23 myself, I'm moderating this. My name is Mahmoud Safar, and we have panelists, Mr. Mohammed Rashid, partner of PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Mr. Shaukat Hussain, manager of BD Ventures. The expectation and the outcome of today's discussion is we're going to hear from Mr. Adnan Imam, who is a BPO investor in Bangladesh, and not resident Bangladeshi. He's a BPO investor in Bangladesh. We would like to start off listening to his experience, his obstacles, his challenges, and threats in this industry. BPO, as you all know, had started off back in the West. It's a service level agreement of pushing your back office out to somebody else who gets the economies of scale because he does 10 other clients. There are two things he developed. One is efficiency. He does the same thing over and over again to 10 clients. And the second thing is economies of scale. And that's how he reduces cost for an organization. As you are all aware that the industry started moving towards east. India, Philippines has come over and taken it. The total global outsourcing revenue in 2014 stood at 104.6 billion US dollars, which was 45.6 billion in 2000. So in 14 years, from 45 to 104. You can see the growth that's happening. BPO generated around 28.5 billion, and IT outsourcing generated around 76.1 billion of that total amount. 51.6% of total global outsourcing revenue came from Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. 35.6% from USA. It's the single largest outsourcing still now. And 12.8% from Asia Pacific region. If we look at India, which is a better example for us to look at, in mid-90s we saw BPOs coming into India, and they flourished. There are a number of BPOs that came. And they took in very high-level, skilled, qualified people. They took in ex-bankers, ex-engineers on the process side, who ran their BPOs. And as of today, as you know, the valuation has really gone up, and India is a major market. Total outsourcing revenue was 59.9 billion in India in 2011, and expected to reach 106 billion in 2019. India's share in global outsourcing was 51% in 2011. So if they can take it so majorly, followed by Philippines, very small in Sri Lanka, that's 13 now, why not the next destination, Bangladesh? I guess Philippines also does around, in 2011, I had a figure of $11 billion. I think I'll leave that now to speak about, but just to set the note, the trend of the discussion today. What we will talk about in the next 1 hour and 20 minutes is about opportunities, challenges, and obstacles. And we will talk a bit about why is not enough investment being attracted to this industry. With that little note, I'd like to thank you all for being here and for your patience listening to the next 1 hour 20 minutes. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, take the head. Mutlu Ahmed here in this room. May I request Mr. Adnan Imam, Managing Director of Genex Infosys Limited, the keynote speaker, take the head, please. May I request Mr. Mohammed Rashid, partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers, to take the head, please. And Mr. Shaukat Hussain, Managing Director of BD Ventures. And request Mr. Adnan Imam to tell us about his experiences. He's an investor and runs a BPO, a very large BPO in Bangladesh called Genex Infosys Limited. May I request him to give us a brief introduction and of his company, what he does, what are the challenges, what he needs to do, where we want to.
Respected guests, members, friends, media, Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon. Firstly, I would like to thank the BAMCO and ICT Ministry for organizing this event, which I think is very valuable for us all to understand the footprint where Bangladesh can go to. and also our supportive government policymakers to take such initiative, and which truly puts Bangladesh in a footprint. Now, a bit more about my background. Thank you, Satya Bhai, for a brief introduction. By background, I'm a qualified accountant out of UK. I was with Merrill Lynch, and I also worked for a number of recruitment outsourcing company in UK. And I still am based out of UK, and in Bangladesh, I have been involved in various investments since 2008, namely in the financial spectrum. I've got myself involved in a bank and a number of financial institutions, and also the RMG textile sector, and also in the ICT industry. Now, proudly, I was part of a very interesting setup a couple of years ago, where a very good management team came to me with an opportunity to fund a BPO operation in Bangladesh. Now, being an NRB out of London and not even understanding much about it myself, I took the encouragement to embark into a territory which is very new in Bangladesh. So today, in 2 years, I'm quite proud to say that we technically employ close to 2,000 people. We have got 10% of the revenue that this sector is generating, about $13 million. And we are looking to actually grow through more acquisitions or more opportunities as the business grows. Now, within the BPO spectrum, what I felt that the biggest challenge was to get good workforce. And the characteristics of Bangladesh people are that as soon as you can train these people in the right way, I think they're actually much more better than a lot of overseas people, because we kind of work in both spectrums, and we see that the intelligence that our country people have is very good, but they have to be just guided. So, moving on to the session's topic about entrepreneurship and about what my experience has been so far. I think that we all understand what BPO means. Just to put it back into context, if you operate someone's non-core activity as your profit center, that is actually a business process outsourcing in a nutshell. So I think there's a perception in Bangladesh, which unfortunately I also find. If people ask me, are you doing BPO business? What is that? Call center. Now, this doesn't actually define BPO. BPO is actually any process that you outsource. It doesn't have to be voice. It can be data. It can be anything else. It can be doing accounting. It can be doing payroll. So anyone's non-core business activity getting outsourced is BPO. And the fundamental reason why someone would actually outsource their activity is so that from a P&L perspective, from a company's perspective, they can save money. So it actually will add to the bottom line and allow the core management to focus on the core business, which then allows specialization to be grown. So let's say, for example, we operate in the spectrum of telecommunication, and we deal with the non-core activities. So the telecom provider can then focus on their core business of actually selling voice, selling data, and when we actually are providing the service to the non-core activities, and we create those specialization. Now, so that is in a nutshell what I see happening right now. But going forward, as you all know, that the wealth creation, and I think the path is also changing from being more capital and labor intensive to more people and brain and intelligence oriented. So Bangladesh, in terms of the next BPO destination, has a lot of positives towards it. Just to highlight a few, which is, it's got a very young population base, as you know, growing English-speaking workforce, cost of the manpower. Now, the reason why I want to emphasize on cost of manpower is because India and China are moving up the value chain. Bangladesh is actually known to be a fairly cheap area for labor, and one of the reasons why we are very good in RMG. At the same time, the skill base that we are trying to bridge right now is actually comparatively much more cheaper than any other Western countries, and the quality is pretty much improving. So I think there is scope to improve the education IT in the whole spectrum. The telecommunication and IT infrastructure that we have in Bangladesh right now is at par with the global standards. The time lag that we have with places like Europe and USA is an advantage for us. The infrastructural lacking is actually getting covered. At the same time, the cost is also coming down, so which is a good thing. And we have proactive policy making done by the current government, and going forward, I think that there is more positive policies going to be made, which is going to make the investments much more attractive. At the same time, whilst talking about the positive, we cannot ignore what the negatives are. Now, to give a few, and some of my experiences are, that we need to fast track the regulatory issues. The attrition, the manpower is a problem, that you don't have the skill base that's required for the specific job to be done. The infrastructure such as land, property, rent is very high. We need to start promoting urbanization. We need to start getting out of the main capital into other areas where the infrastructure is there, and to promote people to go out there, and to be able to get much more regulated on the data protection issues, so that people are more comfortable with sharing data and giving us more work. So where we sit today, we are actually competing with countries like India and Philippines. So just to give you the demographic dividend that India has, today they are employing 3.5 million people, than places like India and Philippines. Now, I think there's both scopes in the domestic space as well as the international space. Now, we have got a lot of experience in the domestic BPO market. We feel that the big multinationals, the e-commerce clients, and a lot of companies with major processes have started to outsource some of their activities. The key challenge again is to be able to have an open mind about it, and for us to be able to take on more work and to be able to control the competition. One of the biggest areas which I feel that where Bangladesh can go is the international work that they can bring in Bangladesh. Now, we have recently joint ventured with a company in Bangladesh which is already doing a specialist medical KPO, knowledge goes out into back-to-back LCs to bring fabrics and everything. But in here, if you are doing export-oriented BPO, the money stays in Bangladesh because people don't have to send the money out. So that's another positive side that you have to look at. Another positive thing about what Bangladesh is doing right now, the state-of-the-art telecommunication infrastructure with fiber optics. Bangladesh, as you know, by JP Morgan, was given the highlight to be the Frontier 5. And we also found that there's a global research house called Gartner. They have actually highlighted Bangladesh to be the next 30 top destination for outsourcing contracts to strengthen non-urban economics and reduce migration to crowded cities. We need to show that have to be able to actually accept the fact that these guys will accept it, because when you go to file the taxes, then they start opening up a lot of laws which is not clear. So these laws have to be very clear. And I would urge the central bank to start thinking about flexible foreign exchange to start the process. FMCGs, e-commerce, and we feel the major step can go towards the banking arena. So the time has come for government and policymakers. I'm sure that we should attract much bigger companies to come in here to take the service levels to the next stage. So with that, I would actually finish my brief note, but I'm here for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Adnan, for your deliberation and information on the industry. Let us take it from here, and if I can go back to you. You've said a few things, challenges are part, people, rental, all that thing. I guess the larger challenges would be to get investors in here. Because at this point, BPO is doing exactly what government used to do back in the 80s, which means we had a Sri Lankan, we had a Chinese, we had a Korean called buying us out of Hong Kong. And they used to get the orders, which then were sent on a back-to-back LC, and that's how the back-to-back LC came out. And we're basically subcontractors. Till the buyers found out that this comes out of Bangladesh, till they started concentrating on us and saying, all right, we're going to cut the middleman. Because everybody wants to cut the middleman. It's good for the buyer, it's good for the seller. That's how buying houses started disappearing over the period of time from the Bangladesh government arena. And the little that I know of the BPO industry, I think we're still doing a lot of, on the IT side of BPO, a lot of subcontracting work, which basically means European developers, software developers are getting the work and patching out small new things to Bangladesh. I think it's a good start. The challenging part is on the investment side. And I don't see in any country a foreigner comes and invests unless they see domestic people believing in their investment. So I've just give Adnan a bit of rest because he spoke for a long time, so I'll come back to him later. I would turn to Mr. Shaukat Hussain, manager of BD Ventures, and as you all know, BD Ventures is probably the first venture capital company, a Bangladeshi venture capital company to start here. We have recently seen that Phenox Capital has come in, which is a Silicon Valley-based venture capitalist, VC, as we call them, specialized in the IT and the application areas. We are yet to see what they're going to do. I'll go to Mr. Robertson to ask that since you are not in the typical lending business, but more on the equity business, which is you're an investor than a lender, etc. How do you see the prospects of more investor, family trust fund, institutional funds, people like you who are initiating investment and taking co-partners or co-investors with you? How would you see the prospect in the coming years, 16, 17, for you, for an option to look at the BPO industry, and what would be the challenges there?
It's rightly pointed out that actually BPO is an opportunity for future, and it's considering Bangladesh actually fundamentals, there is a lot of opportunity to grow. And I can say actually it can come from two fronts. One is actually there are a lot of freelancers is working independently. They can club together, or anyone can become entrepreneur and he can actually employ someone or a group of people to become actually enterprise level, to work as an enterprise, which is happening in India, Pakistan, Philippines, somewhere else also. When actually we see they are not actually competing as an individual, they are competing as an enterprise, and they are collecting job and they are actually getting the things done by others. And also from other fronts, suppose big houses, corporate, either from local or from the outside, they can actually outsource their mundane job and get the thing done by others. So from investment perspective, actually, we are actually pursuing for a couple of years to those who are working as a freelancer, and among the freelancers there are some enterprises also. So we are trying to convince them to form a enterprise, or who are already formed enterprise, to get some fund and actually to think big or to become big. And another enterprise which is very successful, I don't want to name, or I can name, this is actually Train Station 23. This is very good BPO. They are doing very good job in a sense. They are working for different countries, so Scandinavian countries. They deputed programmer over here who works actually for other organization in different countries. So this way actually we are pursuing, and there are opportunity. This type of organization sometimes happen that actually they don't see the big picture. They sometimes happen contented with what they are doing at present. But the opportunity actually is so big, it can become like Infosys or other institution. What happened in India, they can become that big. But sometimes it happens that actually it's a question of scaling up. Maybe they are actually working with 100 people or something like that. But to manage 1,000 people is a different ball game. It's a question of management capability. Or sometimes they are afraid that whether they will lose the control. That's why sometimes they actually don't want to take the investment, or are not so much interested to become big. So these are challenges, and sometimes it happens that we have to persuade them that actually you think what you are doing, how you can make it bigger, how you can actually take the bigger pie in the in the global arena. So these way actually we are pursuing, and we see that there are opportunities. It's actually from both the side, from our side and also their side, actually to bridging the gap. But ultimately, if they want to take the fund, we are actually ready. We can finance those enterprises. Those who are want to from freelancer to they want to become the actually enterprise level, and those who actually want to start something for other enterprises, that also actually for us is an opportunity to invest. Thank you.
I will now sort of progress to, we've heard the challenges, we've heard the interest, the appetite, but we're not really seeing it there. And the government through BRTA has issued licenses to 100 plus BPO operators. And this is probably a silent thing. If you look at the Indian story, when Tata came into BPO, that's called, Shravan has mentioned the skills, the ability to manage process and people. You know, for a young entrepreneur, pardon me, not trained, it's a big challenge. And I'll tell you a little story of a challenge that I was reading the other day. There's a large BPOs in Chennai, and you know there's been Chennai flooding. BPOs have a standard which is called zero tolerance to the service level agreement. There is no excuses, you have to deliver. And after the flooding, they realized that people are not being able to come to the office to run the BPOs. Finally, their homes got affected, so they had to transport out people on the last flight out to Bangalore and run a BPO on there. Those are challenges, so it's size. We will not get international contracts unless the employer has that much of conscious service provider. I will turn to my left to my colleague, Mamunur Rashid, who has a lot of experience with international financing, international investments. He had been with Standard Chartered Bank as the head of corporate investment bank. He had been the country head of CDNA. And today he's even in a better position to comment on this because he's the partner of PricewaterhouseCoopers. I would like to ask Mamun to tell us a bit about the investment climate, the challenges of foreign investment coming to Bangladesh, and particularly with the stress on the BPO industry as to how he sees it.
Under the leadership as well as under their comradeship or with their comradeship. When we are speaking today, PwC has been assigned by the government of Bangladesh, to be more precise, ICT Ministry, to put up the country's first disaster recovery center in Jashore. So we are building, as early as this evening, we are putting up a serious inclusive financing plan for that National Data Disaster Recovery Center in Jashore. So the challenges those are looking like toward this financing could be the similar challenges faced by our BPO industry. That will the people go there? Will the people be available in Jashore? How many super specialists we need? How are we going to finance that? And how are we going to, and again the financial, what would be our proposal? How do they get back their investment? So these are the similar story for any investor in Bangladesh or elsewhere in the world. While we are talking of any foreign investment coming into this BPO space, I would see that that is going to be more of equity than of debt, as Mr. Mahmood Sattar has rightly focused. And there, how do we attract the private equity investors into this opportunity space? And this is all, I guess, related to the overall image of Bangladesh. Can Bangladesh deliver? Bangladesh is known as a natural disaster-prone country. Bangladesh is known as a politically kind of unstable country. And more importantly, having a neighbor like India, where India has produced Satya Nadalas of this today's world or Sundar Pichai of this world, how the more US-bound orders from United States of America will pour into Bangladesh. And what did we do? Well, the buyers, most of the buyers are either India service or India owned. There, Adnan Imam has rightly mentioned that they are going to buy some of the outfit who are pouring in order into countries like Bangladesh, India, Philippines or China, or invest in those, or they are going to buy some of the regional or invest in some of the regional kind of a buying house or middle houses who are giving orders to the countries in India, Bangladesh, Philippines and China. So this is one side. Another side could be, yes, the disaster recovery that I started to talk about, and also business continuity. If there is a natural disaster, if there is a political chaos, political mess, if there is some other uncertain issues, then how are we going to ensure that our order will keep on being delivered to United States of America or Europe and anywhere in the world? So episodic activities like stopping Facebook, anybody can stop anything, anytime, these does send a wrong message to the buying world. Yes, and we are having a tough time to convince, and unnecessarily we are being questioned, and these are not the questions one of the FDI facilitators should be facing. Rather, we should be facing questions like the capacity of our people, recruitment of the right kind of people, interest rate for domestic borrowing, capacity of the domestic entrepreneur, legal environment, legal regime, but unnecessarily because of some episodic work of somebody in the government somehow felt. So now our answer is also being diverted from interest rate, capacity of the entrepreneur, delivery, business continuity, disaster recovery to this political kind of whimsical decision. So less we face these things, that will help us to send a better message. Now coming back to my subject that has been allocated to me, the financing. As I have mentioned, I would see that yes, more financing should come from the equity, private equity investor rather than the plain vanilla debt. And debt is not suitable also for other than working capital for establishing any project or plant, and thereby everybody would look at either receivable financing or whether you do have a robust pipeline. And so far I know Bangladeshi entrepreneurs are having a tough time to find out the right kind of partner who will sell their proceeds or order them for any help, billing outsourcing or architectural design outsourcing that we are getting to see in Bangladesh happening in a piecemeal way, and of course some other IT outsourcing also. So private equity, how do they come? The regulatory environment, the regulatory regime, and how, because while we are seeing Bangladesh Bank's Entrepreneurs Equity Fund is terribly underutilized, and there has been continuous budgetary allocation from the Ministry of Finance through our annual budget process to develop IT entrepreneur, to support and finance IT entrepreneur. And you go and ask Honorable Governor or as such the ICB Managing Director here in Bangladesh, you will get to see a very dismal picture. Almost 99% of that allocated fund and budgetary allocation for the IT entrepreneurship development. And this is in other sense is a private equity fund basically, and sponsored fund, an equity fund, and that is underutilized, not utilized. So that will tell you a story that yes, either our IT entrepreneurs are failing to make a presentation in the right kind of format, or they are not being able to share their perceived good news with the investors or investment community, including the central bank. So this could be solved in two ways, I guess. One is that IT entrepreneurs, apart from putting up a very good capacity here in Bangladesh, they must also put up a financeable or predictable or trustable business plan that will command respect from the investor. This is one. And number two, they must be seen liaising more with the ultimate buyer. If the buyer's trust is not there and buyers are not putting up regular orders, then of course, be it equity investor or a debt investor, they are going to be very shy. So it is net is a robust business plan, the capacity building, as well as commanding regular buying orders from the international buyers, and also, as Mr. Mahmood Safdar has very rightly mentioned, if the domestic market is not strong, if the domestic investors are not happy with the investment regime, whatever is the opportunity space it could be, then international investors will of course feel shy. We have been talking about a backbone IT processing, national IT processing established in the private sector or by the private sector for pretty long time. I don't know why the banks or the telcos have to depend on their own official base and pay them very high rate, and then there is a serious turnover. Instead of doing that, running their own call center, why not they outsource it? Why not every consumer banking in each of the commercial banks, every sales department in each of the telcos, they start outsourcing their call centers, their sales process, their CRM process to the outsource agencies. That will tell you that yes, if you ask the Grameenphone of this world, if you ask the Citibank of this world, or if you ask the Standard Chartered of this world, they will tell you our domestic industry or the backbone processing industry is yet to come up the card. And here lies the answer of financing, here lies the answer of investment, here lies the answer of getting in the next opportunity trajectory for the entire BPO industry in Bangladesh. Thank you so much.
Mamun, thank you very much for your candid conversation or candid dialogue. You have always been candid. A couple of things I'd like to pick up from Mr. Mamun Rashid's deliberation. Two things that struck my mind. One is there's funds in the central bank. There's funds with ICB that is a very dismal picture of utilization, and there's a pressure on utilization. There's the other side of the story. Always, if you go to the entrepreneurs, they would say there's so much of bureaucracy you can't get through that thing. Those funds have been created, but the approvers of those funds are like protector of those funds. And I've heard this story many a time in my life. But then there's two flip side of a coin. And I think I was very impressed with one part that Mamun said, that a robust investment story. A friend of mine who is a VC in Silicon Valley was talking to me, and he says, we walk in on a presentation, 45 minutes, we decide $20 million, $50 million. Because of the certain standard that country or the industry or the expectation has reached. There's also a bit of truth in it, though my friends sitting out over here from the IT industry will not accept, and there will be arguments going on till 5:30 in the evening, that I think from an investor perspective, domestic, let's talk domestic, then we'll go international. When on a domestic investor's perspective, I think there is a failure on the entrepreneur's part to make the investor see through the vision. Because an entrepreneur sees through a vision with a lot of passion, a lot of belief. An investor is an emotional-less animal. He looks at pure, simple possibility of an IRR. And the story, and he internally challenges the story and creates obstacles in his mind. So I guess Mamun is very rightly pointed out on the robustness and being able to convince. And he's also pointed out something which I will turn to a real investor on my right and ask Mr. Adnan Imam this question. Mamun said about perception, that people ask you, is Facebook and WhatsApp shut in your country? And I go back and say, yeah, but you know, it's shut in Dubai, it's shut in Saudi Arabia, you better don't stop investing and going there. But why is it to us that the question you ask, and especially like investment facilitator like us, the questions are given this way. There's a delegation was supposed to come from UK for investment in Japan. till these two foreigners got killed, a Japanese and an Italian gentleman. And I kept on saying this is a stray incident. There have been two Chinese diplomats shot there in Philippines. Can you stop going there? There have been many people who have been shot in America in the last few days. There have been many people who have been shot. The French investor like IFC Propaco didn't come to Bangladesh because of this. They have a ban. And I had an invitation, so I said, I think Bangladesh government is giving us a ban to go to Paris because it's just 124 people in one night. So it's all a question of perception and image. And I would actually turn to Adnan, the more pertinent question. Facebook, WhatsApp, let's not talk about that. For 45 minutes on 18th of November, the internet was shut down. For an industry like BPO, where SLAs has zero tolerance on downtime, what would foreign investors, when his company goes out to seek a contract as service provider, what would be their reaction? The first question, how would he face it? It was by accident, it was unintentional, it was unplanned, we apologize. But does it leave a scar in the mind of the foreign, either work or the supplier or an investor? Hey, Bangladesh, watch. Could you sort of answer that?
Thank you, Satar. It's a very interesting question. I think there is no specific answer to it, but I think if I switch on my investor brain, I think you will always think about, am I seeing money here? Because
that's one part. I'd also like you to address a contractor who's thinking that he's going to outsource this job.
Yeah.
Should he employ it in Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka?
So I think what from a perspective of risks, any person who will outsource a specific functionality of their business will always have to do the risk assessment of what they feel can be outsourced or not. And I think country risks are always there. Unfortunately, because before I came on to invest full time in Bangladesh, the media always highlights Bangladesh as negative, which is actually a bad thing. At the same time, if you really go through the substance of this negativity, there is actually quite good stuff beyond Bangladesh. Because I personally think that in London or even in Paris, right, what security don't you have as a Muslim that you can't go and get killed? So at least I can say that in Bangladesh you have the element of security. So it's not, I think that's one big debate. So I can go with that. From an investor's perspective, I think it's down to a service provider to convince the client that what are the disaster recovery plan, what are the mitigating circumstances in the event that such thing happens. I think they would look at two things. Okay, what level of risk reward is there? If the risk is manageable, and if the risk is something that you can control, they'll go ahead and do it. If they feel that these risks are so much big that they cannot operate in a country like Bangladesh, then they'll not do it. So from an investor perspective, I think it goes down to the investment, the ROI, and to do with the risk profile of the specific job function that you're looking at. So that's how I look at it. I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. It's a branding Bangladesh image issue. BPO is an issue that we'll have to start showing our skills level over there and predictability of service level agreements. I would like Mamoon to sort of general highlight on his experience, because he's worked for very senior position of an American multinational, a British multinational, and now he's done a lot of facilitation on investments. What does we need to do really? We really need to do, Mamoon, to start building. I know you've said about the plans of the local domestic, but building that credibility part, not only in the BPO industry, but as an investment opportunity in Bangladesh. What the regulators, the government, the investors, and entrepreneurs really need to do.
As Mr. Mohammed Sattar has rightly mentioned, that I will try to be as candid as possible, and I'm sure what is being delivered here can only be shared within the audience here. Say, back in 1998, at the invitation of late Finance Minister, Mr. S.M.S. Kibriya, the youngest director of Harvard Institute of International Development, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, now is an advisor to the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. He came to Dhaka to speak on the Bangladesh's competitiveness. And he did mention two things about Bangladesh's future and how do we bring up the competitive industries to the global level. And one I remember with bit of constructive criticism, and that was the future of Bangladesh possibly lies. How does it manages its relationship with its neighbor India? It's a very kind of pinching comment for many of us here, while we are being somehow forced to tolerate a big neighbor like India, and at times we don't like it. But again, I will try to arrest your attention towards what has my brother Mr. Mahmood Sattar has mentioned, that the buying house, the story we were writing, supported by a US university, we were writing the story of rise of Bangladesh textile entrepreneurship. That was a big project we did in my previous immediate past incarnation. And then we found out the role of buying house, or the JCPenney, they did not know Bangladesh. Hamim Garments, or Walmart did not know Mr. Sinha. There is a retired captain called Mr. Sinha in Bangladesh. Or Gap did not know there is a very good entrepreneur in Mr. Nasiruddin of Pacific Jeans. Who got them introduced? It is not the road show or the fair in Germany or UK. These are the buying houses. And most of these buying houses, whether we like it or do not like it, were man-driven or led by the people from our neighboring country. And they could link little bit earlier, or they did put up the linkage little bit earlier than us. So our initial journey, as Professor Jeffrey said, the Columbia professor has likely mentioned, that we'll have to be doing much. How can we lead with the Indian biggies who are also now under pressure because of the escalating cost? And anytime, as we have mentioned, even in Indian startup analysis also, Bangladesh private universities, we may not like their quality of education. They may be extraordinarily dependent on Dhaka University professors. Mostly those are archaic in their teaching model. But one thing is right, these kids in BRAC University, East West University, North South University, they are very good in computers, and possibly they can write and read and speak better English than the South Indians. So here lies the competitiveness. How do we fuel that competitiveness? It could be with the help of our neighboring country, partnering with some of the big BPO leadership entrepreneurs in India, or maybe in Philippines, and believe you me, our development partners are ready to help. Most of our ICT ministry in the last few months or 1 year or so has become possibly the most visited ministry by the expatriate, by the development partners representatives. I didn't know before I joined PwC, this ministry is continuously writing check for Bangladesh's future. So how do we fuel that? Of course, in togetherness. And there should be more energy of the young entrepreneur, young government officials, and people in between like Mr. Mahmood Sattar and others should be channeled and diverted towards this. How can we make best use of this emerging competitiveness among our energetic youth of Bangladesh? And that is not, it is a story to tell, story to share, and someone in United States of America or Britain, more importantly India, to trust this story. So maybe you have to share some of your hard-earned money with an Indian entrepreneur, with a Filipino entrepreneur, but believe you me, my friends, that is going to be the game, only possible game. But of course, once you reach a stage where you can dictate the terms, You can become a regional entrepreneur. You can become a global entrepreneur. You can become an Asian entrepreneur. And we have seen even on the entrepreneurship development side, I guess not Bangladesh Bank, they have got so many things, and most of our commercial bankers are attuned towards debt management only, security and collateral. If you go by security and collateral, there would not have been any Grameen Bank, there would not have been any BRAC, so thereby it is quasi-entrepreneurship company like Grameen Bank and BRAC. So we can possibly think of, along with ICT Ministry and other people who are working in this opportunity space, whether we can give birth to a new entity which will be predominantly driven by the private sector, could be basis, could be someone else, and then we really continuously focus this, not only IT entrepreneurship development, also how do we take them to the next possible trajectory. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I would ask one more question and then open it to the floor for question answer sessions as per my watch. Ram is really sort of articulated very well. When we started off the garments in 80s, I did mention, and he articulated very well that we were not known to the world. On the basis of this, I'd actually turn to Mr. Abani now and ask him, since he runs a BPO, I'm told one of the largest in Bangladesh, is it time for them to go market with the larger BPOs and subcontract work instead of going to a direct client who does not know Bangladesh, who does not trust Bangladesh, who does not know the skills of the people of Bangladesh? Because today, those buying houses nearly disappeared because JCPenney now knows Bangladesh, Walmart now knows Bangladesh, and Mango now knows Bangladesh. So is it a time that the strategy would be to actually, instead of marketing to a direct client, market with subcontract work like we see in the garment factory? When a plant manager walks out and sets up a factory, he can't get a direct order, so he goes to his old employer and says, I know you give it out to other work, you know my capability, give it to me. So that is a question I'd like to put to Mr. Imam. Is it time that you all go and start marketing to people who have a relationship of the West, and the employer trusts him, not you, but will ultimately find a way service to do? Thank you.
Thank you. I think what you say is absolutely right, and I think that is the right strategy. I was in the US BPO seminar about 2 years ago, and Bangladesh was there as well, and there was a big bang from the ICT ministry as well. But unfortunately, we kind of, as Bangladesh as a country, we're quite far behind a lot of developing countries, or developing or will develop Philippines, Mexico, and all that. Now, just to go to specific examples, I'll just give an example of what we achieved. Just one of our examples. We competed in an international tender for one of the operators, Myanmar operation, and we, along with an Indian and African company, we won with, because they actually felt that we had the right caliber to do so. Now, going back to your specific question, the strategy is there, and we feel that the work that West is actually exporting right now is mainly to the countries like India and Philippines, and we are closely working with the likes of the big boys in India to actually start getting work here, because they cannot beat the prices because people are moving up the value chain. So automatically, you have Bangladesh is a very attractive platform for them to land the work. And then you don't actually do it with the direct client. The client becomes becomes that BPO operator that you are subcontracting for. And I think there's a huge scope, and in fact, we are already in that space working on it. And we're just trying to define the KPIs and the SLAs that needs to be met. And I think, yeah, that is actually a huge opportunity, and that's the way to go, at least for a spectrum. Ultimately, then the JCPenney's of the BPO world will come to us directly at some point. Yeah.
Good. That's a happy note we'll end discussing here, and I'll open the floor for question and answers. And I have one request. Would you please direct your question to whoever you'd like to hear the answer from? Are there microphones out on the floor for question and answers?
Thank you. And I think I'm the only Australian in the room anymore. Cricket players, a lot of cricket players. And first of all, I'd like to say I concur completely with remarks, and I just want to tell you a very brief story, because this is about perception of Bangladesh from an outside, and no disrespect intended. On Monday, I got to the airport. I put my form that I filled in inside a box, and I flashed my passport to a machine. I didn't talk to a single person, and I'm inside the airport. Yesterday I was in Malaysia, and at the central station, I went into the Malaysian Airways booking office, spoke to the lady. I said, "Are you sure my bag's going to get to Bangladesh? I'm in the middle of the city." She said, "Don't worry, it'll be there." Everything was like clockwork. Then last night I got to Bangladesh airport, and if I was an investor in this country, what I saw was shambolic. It took me an hour just standing in a queue just to get my passport through immigration. The thing was, in the crowd, everybody was standing there silently, just, oh well, and people were joking about it. One Bangladeshi guy started shouting out, "This is wrong." And it is wrong, because if people come from Western countries and they come here, the very first thing they see, I mean, if I was an investor last night, I would have got to the plane, I would have gone in through it, and I would have just gone back, because I'm going, wow, it's a country like this. The very first thing that has to be outsourced in this country is the immigration services. You should get that. You talk about domestic stuff, I'm telling you, that is letting you all down. It is absolutely worthless. And the very first thing I'm doing is going to whoever the minister is for that and saying, you need to outsource that and get some people who understand BPO in here to fix this up, so that people just run through and just think, I mean, what a joke. Anyway, that's the first thing. So the second thing I wanted to make the point was that in respect of the investors, whatever the image is here, just remember money doesn't smell. They couldn't care what happens here. If they're making money, they will come. And whether you go to the Philippines or what have you. And the third thing I want to say is you've got to stop talking about India. That's not your competition. Your competition is Vietnam. And in Vietnam this year, for the very first time, they introduced English as a compulsory for children in kindergarten. So in 10 years' time, when all those kids graduate from high school, they'll be all speaking perfect English. They already do lots of BPO. They're up and coming. That's who your real competition is. Countries like Mexico, Brazil, the Caribbean, Vietnam, Cambodia. Forget Philippines or forget India. They're too far advanced and they're at a different stage of their development. You're on a different journey. But you've got opportunity if you can see what the future is holding and how the market is changing. So that's what I would say to you is, you have just got the wrong focus thinking about India. And you, to the gentleman here, you're absolutely right about looking to India, getting crumbs off the master's table. Get it where you can. If that's what they've got, and they've got work that they can pass to you. But the main thing about BPO, many people, when they talk about BPO 1.0, which is the price, labour arbitrage, all that sort of stuff, the golden rule is people go for the price, but they stay for the benefits. So once you're in the game and you prove how good you are at whatever it is that you do in terms of outsourcing, then they will stay because money doesn't smell. That's what I'd like to say to you. Did you want that? Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I have also had a question for Mr. Adnan Imam, actually, from an investor's perspective as well as someone starting out in this sector. What are the potential bottlenecks/disadvantages that we have within our skilled labor for the BPO service? Because as I can imagine, like when you mentioned Philippines, how they started competing with India is because their accent was more neutral than India. Whereas I think that made sense. And now Sri Lanka we hear is also growing, and then there's Vietnam, whose English is still behind us, but they are going to catch up. What are the possibilities that, as someone who's just invested in a call center myself, I'm saying call center because it's just a common word to go by, what are the possible bottlenecks that I face trying to groom up the skilled people, like agents or whoever you are? Because right now it just seems like in our country, even though hypothetically speaking everything's in place for a very wonderful future, do we have enough depth and do we have enough in the supply of available manpower?
Thanks. It's an interesting question. Just going back to answer your specific questions. The gentleman at the back referred to India. I accept your point, but I'll still use it as an example. the the issue about supply of people. The reason why I say this is that most of the people who are in this spectrum or in this sector right now, this is not their main focus. So we, along with again the ICT ministry, they have been a lot of initiatives to develop training institutes and educational processes to actually make BPO or this spectrum actually a career path. So it's happening. There is a lot of attrition, but again training. So if you have a call center operation and if you have the right training in place, I'm sure that you can train the people. But the key is to control the attrition, is to make sure that these people who are coming in to work with you are coming in for a career, decide, and if I again compare this to India again, India entry-level agents are actually cheaper than garments workers in Bangladesh. Going back to answer your second question about what you as an investor should do, is I think voice from there's a growing population of young population of Bengali chaps, young girls and boys who are developing a very decent neutral accent, better than India, and I think that that's going to develop. But I still think that data or non-voice activities are going to be the biggest earner for us. So I would feel that any development towards that spectrum will be good.
Good afternoon. My name is Mr. Masdul Haq. I come from Khulna. My question is to Mr. Arna. Very common question. What is the best way, or as an entrepreneur, what can I do to get a buyer, to get an order? What's your suggestion?
I think that probably will be a good entry point for you to start doing such work. And second of all, I would say if you're looking at domestic work, not necessarily international, is to actually speak to your contact basis to see which spectrum that there is a non-core activity that you can take on and deal with it. And you need to be able to offer that client or that corporate entity a cheaper cost solution so that they feel the benefit that if they outsource to you, that it's going to add value to their business.
Good afternoon. This is Yunus, the managing director of Universe IT Limited. I have a very bad question. I don't know whether I should ask here or not. With the contract we're doing with the international, we get a contract from our buyer, like American or Canadian. But this contract is not, legally valid. If customer, sack us after 1 or 2 months, yeah, I will not pay you. That time we don't have anything to do. Like my UK client, he didn't pay me for last 2 months payment because we had an agreement. But that agreement is totally illegal. That agreement don't have any legal value. At the same time, if we go under the subcontract, all the time they're playing with the same way with us. Like I'm doing this my call center business last 3 years, and I'm facing this a lot. Like say, £4,000 is very big amount for me. If I cannot get the payments, how can I pay my agents? So from the government side or from this BPO summit, so is there any way that we can get the contract legally from the client? Can you guys do anything for us like that? So that I think in this way maybe we can survive.
They will say there's a discrepancy and not pay you, and they'll not take your goods. The only way to protect this when you are doing a business with an international third country, it's a very legal contract. It's governed under some law somewhere. The only problem is probably your due is £4,000. To run that arbitration, you will spend £10,000. So you actually don't run the arbitration. Because to run an arbitration under the English law in Singapore, you probably spend £10,000 and your payable is £4,000. The way normally other countries do is very simple. The government gets into play to protect their citizens and their business citizens' interest. And I have seen how active different embassies in Bangladesh are. And I used to work for a bank, and I used to be the chairman of an association of the bankers. So I realized how I used to get called in by the commercial section of different embassies who would come up and say, Mr. Sattar, you're the chair, you have to do something, you're going to talk to your member bank, and why are they not going to pay a fellow business citizen of wherever, Mexico, Philippines, Sri Lanka, India. And I've seen strict measures being taken also. to the level the organization who has not paid was refused declined visa to that country. So this has to be taken up by the BPO Association. I think we will now have an association called BACO, right? BACO, with the Ministry of Commerce or with the relevant Ministry of Foreign Affairs and say, these are contracts, they're valid. They're valid, it's not illegal contract. I will object to that word illegal. It's a valid contract. It's money coming through valid channels. It's coming in through the banking channel. The problem is administering the contract, and they will do this to you as long as your size is small. They've done it to garment factories. Many have disappeared garments because they've exported goods, everything has gone out. The name of the spelling of the street, some typist typed it wrong. And the bill was discrepant. I think that is the only answer, but I think you take it more with the association than anybody else. Your association will have to take it with them.
There's, just to help you out with this, there's not a, in the early days of outsourcing, especially in places like the Philippines, what you're talking about is what's called risk-based contracts. So, you know, and usually it was the startup telcos that started to say to the Philippine operators, saying, okay, you know, if you don't get so many inquiries or orders, whatever it is, we're not going to pay. So from a desperation point of view, the early operators, the early adopters into the market, took the contracts on and didn't get paid. Okay, bad luck, you lost your money. But you might explain to the audience about factoring, for example, where you can lay the debt off to a bigger enterprise for 3 or 5%, something like that, if you haven't got the wherewithal yourself. But the other thing that the Filipinos did was, what they did was they said, okay, look, that's great, we've got a contract, they pitched the thing, the person's bought it, but we want 1 month in advance. We have to set up and so forth. And you've always got 1 month if they don't pay for whatever reason, and that's standard now. So the Bangladesh industry has to get itself organised around, don't take certain types of contracts that just on paper look like they could be suspect. Just don't take them. Because if you're going to take that risk, then it's going to be upon you if it goes south. So factoring, one, and I'll get the gentleman from the banks to explain how that works, but also don't do risk-based pricing, especially from telcos or people on the telephone where you're actually having to do sales. That's tough work. And especially, no disrespect once again, but with your accent to people in the Western world, it's very hard. And even here, I have to ask people to slow down because I can't quite hear what you're saying, and you're speaking English. So there is that whole cross-cultural assimilation thing, and but especially from American companies and some British companies where, you know, they might be playing a bit fast and loose with you, and you're in danger of losing some £4,000 is a lot of money to anyone. But I'll just get the gentleman to talk about factoring because I think that's important.
Can I give you an example of a very similar kind of situation which I faced in early years? The talk that you mentioned about why you don't get paid. Now, there's 2 reasons. One is that if you don't have appropriate documentation, you won't get paid. And second of all, if someone wants to, if they don't get paid from the value chain, then you don't get paid. And third, it depends on the end client who's going to pay. So, a couple of ways to mitigate it. That was the question. The question was, how do I protect myself? I think I can talk about specifically UK stuff. I think when we did a contract with an outbound contract, which involved us to do upselling, i.e., for a telecom operator, you need to go and sell a specific number of minutes to be able to get your money. Now that will actually make you earn on commission. Now the small print, which people don't normally read, actually says that knock it off your next commission. So you go into the vicious circle of money coming in and money getting topped off. So how to protect that? Now, number one, if you deal directly with the end client, it's very important. Now the information has become very open. Please do credit search. It costs very little money about that client that you want to serve. If you feel that the balance sheet is strong enough, then you ask for specific type of guarantees from the clients, very little. The international laws are very strong. If I'm a Bengali company and I need to get protection against a specific invoice for an overseas client, it's easily, unless the company goes into bankruptcy or any kind of liquidation process or insolvency process, we can get that money back. But yes, and just to add on to what Satyabhai said, it's the cost of doing so. There's easy ways of doing that. If it's a smaller company, and who is dependent on your service to make money, you can easily secure what is called a small debenture or a preferential share that doesn't cost money. You can go to Companies House website and do it. These platforms throughout the world is getting very easy and cheaper. So the first advice is read the small print and try and secure yourself. And number two is understand the client that you're serving. If they're small, don't take the business. If they're medium sized, if they've got some kind of financial credibility, then take it.
Thank you. As we're running out of time and we're going to do a closure, I'll take one last question from the floor. All right. There isn't a question. I'll explain the factoring part as the gentleman requested. Accents, you're absolutely right. That's why the Filipino accent, right? I worked in Australia for 3 years. I used to work for a bank called INZ, but behind an order is something called credit risk, risk of collecting the value of the order. I am actually very impressed with my panelists because for 1.5 hours we have had a full room, and because I'm sitting this way, I see people coming in and don't see any space to sit down in this, they're going out. So thank you very much, all of you, Dr. Bhai, Adnan and Mahmood. I think it must have been a very lively and a pleasant discussion by them. I only tried to facilitate it. So I would like to thank everybody for being here for 1.5 hours, attending it. I hope from the head table we could give some value to your time. Thank you very much.
Now I request Mr. Tanjiro Joshua, the Executive Director of BAPCO, to present press to our table members. To start with, Mr. Shaukat Hussain, Managing Director, BT Venture Limited. Followed by Mr. Adnan Imam, Managing Director, Genex Infosys Limited. And our moderator, Mr. Mahmood Sattar, Chairman, RS Advisory Limited. And next it goes to Mr. Mahmood Rashid, Preston Partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending.